Walk into almost any pet shop in the world and you'll find the same thing. Row after row of small containers, some barely bigger than a coffee cup, each one with a single male betta fish. No filter, no plants, nothing else at all. What if I told you that in the last 2 years, scientists published 5 peer-reviewed studies measuring exactly what that does to these fish, and that the results have been sitting in academic journals while nothing has really changed on the shop floor? Let's get into it. Hello, my name is Harris Bard for Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London, and this is the Science Series. Betta splendens, the Siamese fighting fish, is almost certainly the most widely kept aquarium fish in the world. It generates millions of pounds in revenue every year, and it is the entry point into the hobby for an enormous number of people. It is also routinely sold in conditions that a growing body of scientific literature is now describing in measured, peer-reviewed language as inadequate. I want to be clear about what this video is and what it isn't. This isn't a polemic about the pet trade. I work in this industry. I know that people selling bettas in small containers are largely following convention, not cruelty. What this video is a synthesis of recent research. 5 studies published between 2024 and 2026 that collectively define with proper scientific rigor what betta fish actually need to express normal behaviour and maintain good welfare. The findings are specific, the methodology is solid, and they matter whether you're a hobbyist keeping a single fish at home or a retailer displaying dozens. Let's start with the most fundamental question. How much space does a betta fish actually need? 2 independent research groups published papers on this in 2024, both in the journal Animal Welfare, and their findings converge on a clear answer. The first by Oldfield and Murphy at Case Western Reserve University in the United States took male bettas and housed them individually in containers ranging from 0.5 litres, roughly the size of a drinking glass, up to 208 litres. They measured swimming behaviour across all groups. Fish in the 0.5 litre containers swam significantly less than fish in any of the larger tanks. But here is the part that surprises most people. Once you reach 10 litres, increasing the tank size further did not significantly increase swimming behaviour. Fish in 10 litres, 38 litres and 208 litre tanks all swam at similar rates. The researchers concluded that 10 litres is the threshold at which bettas can fully express their natural swimming behaviour. That's not a recommendation, that 10 litres is ideal, it's a minimum baseline, and it directly contradicts the 1 to 2 litre tubs and cups that remain standard retail practice. The second 2024 study from a team led by Naomi Clark-Shen and Cullen Brown. Brown is one of the most published researchers in fish cognition and welfare, went further by looking at what's inside the tank, not just its size. They rotated 13 male bettas through 5 tank conditions: a small jar, small, medium and large, and a large bare tank. The furnished tanks contain gravel, live plants with refuge to hide in, with a filter present in some of the conditions. What they found was that the furnishings mattered independently of size. When given planter tanks with hides, fish use these features actively, spending around half their time resting on or in furnishings rather than at the water surface. The researchers noted that fish consistently avoided the filter as a resting site. They're making active choices about where to be in their environment. Together, these 2 studies tell you that a bare container below 10 litres is failing betta welfare on 2 independent dimensions simultaneously: space to move and structure to interact with. Knowing that bettas behave differently in small bare containers is one thing. Knowing what's happening inside their bodies is another. A 2026 study published in the Journal of Applied Animal Welfare Science looked directly at physiology of confinement. Researchers took juvenile betta fish and housed them individually in 250 milliliter bottles, close to commercial betta farming practice and measured cortisol levels, blood chemistry, and stress-related gene expression over 14 days. The cortisol results were less clear-cut than you might expect. There was no statistically significant difference in plasma cortisol between confined fish and controls at most time points. Some people have used this to argue that confinement doesn't stress bettas. That is a misreading of what the study actually found. What was significant was the gene expression data. The confined fish showed a clear shift in the activity of 3 stress-related genes. 3 were upregulated, GR and MR, the glucocorticoid and mineralocorticoid receptors, which mediate the body's response to stress hormones, and HIF-1 alpha, a hypoxia-inducible factor that the body switches on when oxygen runs low. 2 were downregulated. The heat shock proteins, HSP70 and HSP90. This shift was most pronounced at day 3, and the genes had returned to baseline by day 14. What does that tell us? It tells us that bettas mount a measurable molecular stress response to confinement in the first week, and that the response settles over time. Whether that settling represents genuine adaptation or a chronic dampening of the stress response is a question that the study doesn't fully resolve. But the claim that bettas are simply fine in small containers because they evolved near still water is not supported by the physiology here. The study also found that adding 0.5% sodium chloride to the water significantly reduced cortisol levels and suppressed stress-related gene expression during the confinement period. Salt is cheap and widely available. This was a commercial farming context rather than home aquarium keeping. But the finding that water chemistry modification can measurably buffer physiological stress responses has broader relevance. So we know bettas need more space, more structure, and that confinement has a measurable biological cost. The next question is what you can realistically do in a small unfiltered tank, which is still how the vast majority of bettas are kept. A 2026 study published in the journal Animals addressed this directly, asking whether adding aquatic plants to a new unfiltered betta tank could function as a natural biological filter and improve both water quality and fish welfare. The researchers set up 12 individual 2-litre betta tanks, no filter, no aeration, and divided them into 4 groups. One with Sagittaria subulata, one with Alternanthera riecinae, one with Wolffia globosa, essentially duckweed, and a control group with no plants. 25 days, daily measurements. The ammonia results were stark. In the no plant control groups, ammonia climbed throughout the experiment and finished at over 2 milligrams per litre. The Sagittaria tanks averaged at about 0.14 milligrams per litre across the entire trial. That figure is not arbitrary. It is precisely the threshold at which ammonia is known to start impairing fish performance. Sagittaria held the tank right at that line rather than blowing through it. The behavioural results reinforce this. Fish in Sagittaria tanks showed the least surface breathing of any group, on average 0.36 events per 5-minute observation period, compared to nearly 1.5 in the control tanks. They also showed the longest active swimming time. Surface breathing in a labyrinth fish might seem normal, but in this context, it's a stress indicator. The fish is supplementing atmospheric air because dissolved oxygen in the water is critically low. Fewer surface breathing events means better water quality, which means less stressed fish. The researchers also ran full DNA sequencing on the water bacteria in each tank at the end of the experiment. Plant tanks had higher microbial diversity than the control. Crucially, the no-plant control tanks enriched bacterial genera associated with disease risk. The Sagittaria tanks enriched genera associated with beneficial nitrogen cycling and organic matter processing. There is an important caveat here. Sagittaria worked because it grew. A struggling or dying plant makes conditions worse rather than better, consuming oxygen as it decays. The plant has to establish and thrive to deliver those benefits. That has practical implication for what you recommend and how you would advise customers to care for it. The previous 3 papers tell us what plants do to the water and what the fish's behaviour looks like in response. The final study asks a different question entirely. Do bettas themselves actively seek out planted environments when given the choice? A 2025 study in the Journal of Applied Animal Welfare Science used a preference testing design. Individual bettas were given access to compartments containing natural plants, artificial plants, and bare environments, and the researchers measured which they spent the most time in. Bettas actively chose environments with natural plants over bare alternatives. They were not simply placed in a planted tank and measured, they navigated towards it. That's a meaningful distinction from a welfare standpoint. It demonstrates preference, not just tolerance. The fish, when given the option, votes with its fins. So what does 5 papers in 2 years actually add up to? It adds up to this: the standard retail and hobbyist practice for betta keeping, a small, bare container, often unfiltered, often under 2 liters, fails to meet the needs of the fish on every dimension that recent science has measured. It limits movement. It removes structural complexity. It degrades water quality faster. It creates a molecular stress response, and it provides an environment which fish will actively move away from when given the choice. None of these papers were published in fringe applications. They're in Animal Welfare, the Journal of Applied Animal Welfare Science and Animals, peer-reviewed journals with genuine editorial standards. The researchers include one of the most respected names in fish cognition. This is not a campaign, it's convergence. What it means practically: a 10-litre minimum, a fast-growing rooted plant, and some structural complexity. A stone, a piece of wood, something the fish can actually interact with. None of these are luxury upgrades. They are based on the current evidence base, the baseline for keeping this animal properly. As a hobby and as a trade, we have an opportunity to get ahead of this rather than waiting to be told. The science is already there. If you have any questions from this video, please leave a comment in the comments section below, or you can come and find us in store at 1 Finchley Nurseries, NW7 1AS, or you can drop us an email. All of our details are at our website, www.pondlifeaquatics.co.uk. But for now, that's all from me, and I hope you'll join me again next time for this Pond Life.